Imagine waking up in complete darkness, the smell of damp stone filling your nose, chains biting into your wrists, and not a single explanation given for your capture. The cold seeps into your bones, and the only sound is the distant drip of water echoing off the walls. Outside, life continues, oblivious to your suffering, while inside, time itself seems to slow, each hour stretching endlessly. This is the reality of being trapped in a medieval dungeon, a place where survival isn't just about escaping, but enduring, understanding routines, and finding small mercies in a world built for fear and control. You wake because the cold has teeth. It is not the gentle cold of night air slipping through a window, nor the early morning chill before sunrise. This cold lives inside the stone beneath you, creeping slowly through your bones, until even your thoughts feel stiff and slow. You do not open your eyes at first, you only listen, dripping water, far away, metal scraping metal, then silence again. When you finally breathe deeply, the air tastes old, thick with damp earth, rust, and something faintly sour, like straw left too long in darkness. Your hands move instinctively, touching the ground. Rough stone, uneven, wet. You open your eyes, nothing changes. For a moment, you think you are blind. But then you notice a faint difference between darkness and deeper darkness, the vague outline of a wall, perhaps an arm's length away. You push yourself upward. Muscles protest as though you have been still for days. Your head aches, not sharply, but dully, like a memory trying to surface and failing. You search your mind for yesterday. There is no yesterday. Instead, there are fragments, a street, maybe, voices arguing, then hands on your shoulders. After that, only falling asleep. You stand slowly. The ceiling is low. Your fingers brush damp stone above. The space around you is small enough that 3 steps carry you from one wall to the other. Your foot nudges something with a bucket. Empty. A realization grows quietly. You are not here by accident. You feel along the wall until your hand meets iron bars. Thick, cold, unmoving. A door set into stone. Beyond it, a corridor darker than the room itself. Somewhere along it, another drop of water echoes. You call out, but your voice returns, smaller than expected. The dungeon absorbs sound. Even fear struggles to travel here. Minutes pass, or hours. Time has already begun dissolving. Eventually, footsteps approach, slow, practiced, unconcerned. A yellow light appears, trembling along the corridor before the man carrying it becomes visible. He does not hurry. He does not look curious. He looks as one might look at rain, something ordinary, expected. He sets a wooden bowl near the bars and slides it through a gap. You wait for explanation. None comes. Your voice is rough. Why am I here? He shrugs, not unkindly, just empty of interest. You were brought. For what crime? He thinks briefly, as if checking memory for a small detail. No trial written. Then he turns and walks away, light shrinking with him until darkness seals again. No trial written. The words linger longer than the footsteps. You crouch beside the bowl. Bread, dense and slightly damp. Water, metallic in taste. Hunger convinces you quickly. You eat, not because you trust the food, but because your body already belongs more to survival than pride. When finished, you sit with your back to the wall. The stone presses cold through your clothes, and yet your eyelids grow heavy again. You resist sleep. Instinct warns against surrendering awareness, but exhaustion does not negotiate. Gradually the dungeon's rhythm replaces thought. Drip, silence, breath. Time passes differently here. Without sunlight, moments lose their edges. You measure existence only by the guard's returns. Each visit identical. Bowl, water, silence. You begin noticing details. The drip repeats every few breaths. Rats move only after long stillness. Your own heartbeat sounds louder at night, or what you decide is night. Memory returns slowly, not as clear pictures, but as feelings. A marketplace, the smell of baked grain, wind across open ground. These feel impossibly distant, belonging to someone else's life. On what might be the 3rd day, you discover the straw pile in the corner is warmer than the stone. A luxury you almost laugh at. You arrange it carefully, learning how prisoners before you shaped comfort from almost nothing. The dungeon teaches patience not by wisdom, but by force. You begin counting breaths between drips, counting scratches in the stone, counting the guard's steps before he appears. Patterns become anchors. This is how you stay sane, by building a new reality out of the fragments of the old. Your world is no longer cities and skies, but stone and shadow. Your calendar is not days and weeks, but the guard's footsteps and the hunger in your belly. You start to catalogue the sounds. The drip has a name, the clock. The scuttling of unseen creatures becomes the neighbors. The distant clang of a closing gate is the herald, announcing another soul has been sealed away. You give them names because naming them makes them part of your world, not just random noises in the void. It is a small act of control in a place where you have none. You are not just a prisoner. You are a cartographer of this small, dark kingdom. You know its geography, its inhabitants, its rhythms. This is not freedom, but it is a kind of power. Eventually you realize something unsettling. No one screams here. Either the cells are empty, or the prisoners are too tired. You press your ear to the door. Far away, faint movement exists. Not voices, not cries, only shifting weight and chains, adjusting slowly, like people learning to exist without hope. Hope is loud. It cries out. It fights. It rages. Despair is silent. It adapts. It endures. This silence is the most terrifying sound in the dungeon. It's the sound of surrender, of people forgetting what it felt like to want something more. And you wonder, how long until your own hope becomes just as quiet? Days pass. Your fear changes form. At first sharp, then heavy, now quiet. You no longer wait for immediate release. Instead, you wonder how long a human mind can live without change. The answer seems longer than expected. You start to explore the memories you do have, the fragments. That marketplace, you try to rebuild it in your mind. The smell of the fruit stalls, the sound of merchants calling out, the feel of a coin in your palm. You walk through it, street by street, trying to recall a face, a name, a single complete conversation. But it's like trying to hold smoke. The details slip away, leaving only the ghost of a feeling. It's not your memory anymore. It's a story you tell yourself, a fiction to pass the time. One time the guard pauses before leaving. He studies you for a moment. You ask less, he notes. You realize he is right, because questions require belief in answers, and belief is a luxury this place has stripped away. What is the point of asking why when the only answer is the silence that follows? What is the point of asking when time itself has become a meaningless loop? You've learned that the only questions worth asking are the ones you can answer yourself. How many steps to the wall? How many drips until the next rat appears? These are the facts. Everything else is fantasy. After he leaves, you lie on the straw and stare into darkness that has become almost familiar. Your ears now understand its language, the distant doors, the breathing stone, the soft scurry of life thriving where sunlight never arrives. You are no longer a visitor here. You are a resident. Your senses have adapted. Your eyes, once useless, can now detect subtle shifts in the blackness. Your skin can feel the change in air pressure when the guard is approaching, long before you hear his steps. You are becoming part of the dungeon itself, like the moss that grows in the cracks of the stone. Here, existence narrows to essentials: warmth, water, waiting. You find a strange sort of peace in this simplicity. The anxieties of the outside world, ambition, love, lost, they feel like burdens you have been relieved of. Here, the only goal is to see the next bowl of food, to feel the warmth in the straw, to breathe in and out. It's a primal state of being, stripped of all complexity. Is this what it means to be broken? Or is it something else? A new kind of clarity, perhaps. And slowly, quietly, you begin to understand the first truth of the dungeon. Punishment is not always pain. Sometimes it is simply being forgotten. They haven't tortured you. They haven't beaten you. They have just removed you from the world. They have erased you. You are a story with the last page torn out. And the most chilling part is this. Slowly, you are starting to forget the story yourself. The person you were before these walls is becoming a stranger. All that remains is the person who lives in the dark, counts the drips, and waits. Just waits. This has been an exploration of a descent into the quiet horror of solitude and forgotten existence. At some point, you realize that darkness is no longer complete. It does not become light, not truly, but your eyes begin inventing shapes where none should exist. The wall opposite you gains texture. The ceiling separates from the void. The iron bars form thin shadows darker than the air around them. The dungeon has not changed. Your mind has learned to survive inside it. You wake before the guard now, not because you hear him, but because your body has started predicting him. Hunger arrives first, then thirst, then the faint expectation of footsteps. Routine grows like moss in the corners of thought. You sit near the door long before he appears. When he finally comes, he pauses slightly, noticing your position. A silent acknowledgement passes between you, not friendship, not cruelty, simply recognition of a pattern completed. Today, the bread is harder. You chew slowly, making the moment last. Food is no longer only nourishment. It is an event, a marker dividing one stretch of existence from the next. When finished, you keep the bowl beside you longer than necessary, reluctant to return it to nothingness. Before leaving, the guard adjusts the torch on the wall across the corridor. For a brief time, faint light slips through your bars. You freeze. It is the first real light since waking. It barely reaches you, only a dim amber haze. But suddenly the cell expands. You see scratches on the floor lines carved by previous occupants. Some short, some long, some grouped carefully in fives, counting days, perhaps, or attempts to. You touch them gently. The grooves are worn smooth, meaning many hands traced them over long time. You add nothing yet. The torch burns only a few minutes before he removes it, and darkness returns. Yet something inside you has shifted. The dungeon now has shape. Shape creates distance. Distance creates thought. You begin walking small circles around the cell, mapping it precisely, 4 steps lengthwise, 3 across. The ceiling low enough to bow your head near the back wall. A crack near the floor where colder air seeps through. You sit there often. It smells faintly of outside soil, reminding you a world continues somewhere above. Later, perhaps hours, you hear movement closer than before. Not the guard, slow dragging, a chain brushing stone. You hold your breath. From beyond the wall to your right comes a faint sound. Breathing. Someone else lives beside you. Close enough that silence between you feels intentional. You consider speaking, but words feel heavy after disuse. Instead, you tap lightly on the stone. Nothing. You tap again, 3 times. A pause. Then 2 taps answer. You wait, unsure whether relief or fear arrives first. Human presence in darkness is both comfort and reminder of shared fate. You try again. 1 tap. Pause. 1 tap. The reply comes slower this time. Not imitation. Perhaps confusion. Perhaps weakness. For a long time, neither of you continues. Communication requires energy prisoners learn to conserve. Eventually you lie down, strangely calmer. The dungeon is still a tomb of stone, but not entirely empty. Sleep comes easier. When you wake, you dreamt of open sky, but cannot recall its color. The guard returns, as always. You study his face more closely now, not hostile, not kind, merely practical. A man performing a task repeated too often to question. Is there many here? You ask quietly. He shrugs. Enough. How long do they stay? He looks at you for a moment, measuring whether the answer matters. Until they do not. Not helpful, yet perfectly clear. After he leaves, you sit by the wall you tapped earlier. This time you place your ear against the stone. A faint whisper of movement answers. Proof of life. You tap once gently. After a delay, 1 tap returns. You both seem to understand the limits. No conversations, only confirmations. Still here. Days, or what you call days, begin organizing themselves around these contacts. Food, sleep, tapping, waiting. The mind builds routine because routine resists collapse. You begin scratching your own marks beside the older ones. 1 line after each visit of the guard. Not to count freedom, but to prove continuity, that you passed through time and did not dissolve into it. Around what you guess is the 7th mark. Something changes. The guard lingers again. You keep tally, he says. Yes. He studies the wall. Some stop after a while. Why? He considers, then answers plainly. They forget what they count. The words disturb you more than threat could. After he leaves, you stare at the marks long into darkness. You repeat silently, 1, 2, 3, ensuring numbers remain attached to meaning. Your neighbor taps once that night. You answer twice. No reason, just proof. Thought still functions. Gradually you notice other sounds in distant corridors. A cough that never repeats again. Chains lifted and not returned. Doors opening farther away than yours. The dungeon shifts around you while your cell remains constant, like the center of a slowly changing maze. Time here is not measured by sunrise but by absence. And you begin to understand the second truth of the dungeon. A prisoner does not fear death first. He fears losing track of himself before it arrives. The damp air hangs heavy in my cell, a permanent resident like myself. It's a small stone box, and the darkness is so complete it feels solid, something I could reach out and touch. My world is this stone, this cold, and the faint, musty smell of decay. How long have I been here? I don't know. Time has dissolved into an endless cycle of darkness and a sliver of light from the food slot. My only anchor to reality, my only proof of existence, are the scratches on the wall. Each day, when the meager portion of bread and water arrives, I feel my way to the wall and carve another line with a small, sharp stone I found long ago. I count them, tracing each groove with my fingertip. 1, 2, 3, 728, 729. Each mark is a day I've survived. Each mark is a testament that I am still here, still breathing. My days are a routine of silence and thought. I pace the 3 steps from one wall to the other. I sit, I lie down, I listen, and in that listening, I found I was not entirely alone. From the wall to my left, I heard a sound, a faint, rhythmic tapping. At first, I thought it was a rat, or my own mind playing tricks on me, but the pattern was too deliberate. Tap, 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 tap. Hope, a dangerous and unfamiliar feeling, fluttered in my chest. I scrambled to the wall, pressing my ear against the cold stone. I tapped back, a simple, hesitant tap. A pause, then an answer. Tap, just one. It was a question, an acknowledgement. We were 2 ghosts in the dark, and we had just seen each other. Our communication began, a slow, clumsy dance of knocks and pauses. We had no shared code, no language, but we created one. 1 tap for yes, 2 for no. We established a pattern for questions. Over weeks, maybe months, it became more complex. A series of taps for food, another for guard. We spoke of the weather we could no longer feel, the sun we could no longer see. We were building a world between our walls, a fragile sanctuary made of sound. I learned his name, or what I came to know as his name. A quick 3-tap pattern. I gave him mine, a slower 2-tap rhythm. There were 2 guards. I called them Boots and Shuffles. Boots was heavy-footed, his steps echoing down the corridor long before he arrived. He was rough, shoving the food through the slot without a word, his presence a wave of cold authority. Shuffles was different. His steps were soft, almost apologetic. Sometimes, through the slot, I'd hear him humming a quiet, melancholic tune. He never spoke either, but his silence felt different. It felt like shared sorrow, not disdain. One day, Boots was in a particularly foul mood. I heard a commotion from my neighbor's cell, a loud thud, and a string of curses from the guard. Then, silence. I waited, my heart pounding. I tapped our signal. Tap tap. No answer. I tapped again. Frantic. Nothing. The silence from his wall was louder than any noise I had ever heard. For days, the quiet was a crushing weight. The darkness felt deeper, the cold more piercing. I was truly alone again, and the realization was a physical pain. The marks on my wall seemed to mock me. What was the point of counting days if there was no one to know you were counting? Then, one morning, something changed. A new smell cut through the mustiness. It was fresh, clean air, carrying the scent of rain and damp earth. A draft. I crawled towards the far wall and felt around. High up, a small stone was missing. A tiny crack had opened to the outside world. I pressed my face to it, inhaling deeply. It was the scent of freedom, the scent of life. Through that tiny hole, I could see a sliver of grey sky. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I had to tell someone, but my neighbor was gone. The grief returned, sharp and sudden. Yet, I felt a new resolve. He was gone, but I was still here. I had this sliver of sky. I would keep it for both of us. A few weeks later, a new sound. A cough. Faint, weak, but unmistakable. From the cell on my right, my heart leaped. I waited, barely breathing. Another cough. I crawled to the wall and tapped. A single, soft tap. I waited, and then, it came. A fumbling, weak reply. Tap. I wasn't teaching him our code. I was just letting him know he wasn't alone. I tapped my 2-beat rhythm. I tapped his 3-beat rhythm. I was telling this new stranger about us, about the man who was here before. I was keeping his memory alive, passing on the spark of connection he had given me. The guard, Shuffles, came one day. He didn't just slide the food through. "It's spring," he whispered, his voice raspy from disuse. "The birds are back." It was the first human voice I'd heard speak to me in years. I couldn't reply, but I didn't need to. He knew I was listening. It was a moment of shared humanity, a tiny crack of light in the unending darkness. I don't know if I'll ever leave this place. My body is weak, but my mind is a fortress built of memories and taps on a wall. I am not just a number, not just a prisoner. I am the keeper of stories. I am the one who remembers the man who tapped back. I am the one who saw the sky. My identity is not in the name they took from me, but in the connections I've forged in this abyss. Every scratch on this wall is a day I refuse to disappear. Every tap is a declaration that I am alive. And as long as I can hear another soul breathing in the cell next to mine, as long as I can witness their existence and they can witness mine, we are resisting. We are more than our cages. We are a community of two, fighting the madness, one tap at a time. And in this darkness, that is everything. The sound of rain reaches you long before you understand what it is. At first it feels like a change in the breathing of the dungeon, a soft, endless whisper, seeping through cracks in stone. Then droplets begin striking somewhere above, slow and patient, as if the sky itself has found a way underground. You move closer to the wall where the air leaks in. It smells different now, cleaner, cold and distant. For the first time since you woke here, the darkness does not feel completely sealed. The world still exists beyond the ceiling. You tap once, a pause, one tap answers, alive. You close your eyes and imagine the rain falling on open ground, on grass bending under its weight, on roofs, on faces tilted upward. You try to remember the sensation on your own skin. The memory arrives faintly, cool lines sliding down your forehead, but it slips away before you can hold it. Water soon begins gathering near the far corner of your cell, seeping through the stones and pooling along the floor. You pull your straw away from it. The damp spreads slowly, claiming territory the way time does here, without hurry, without stopping. Later, the heavier guard returns. He notices the water immediately and curses softly. He brings a wooden scraper and pushes the growing puddle toward the corridor drain. As he works, you watch his movements carefully. He works not cruelly, not kindly, simply efficiently, as though tending animals. Does it flood often? You ask. Only when the sky remembers us, he replies. You almost ask what he means, but he stands and takes the bowl instead. Before he closes the hatch, you say, "How deep are we?" He hesitates. Deep enough, the seasons barely matter. He shuts the door. You sit with that thought. Seasons, you had forgotten they existed beyond temperature. Somewhere above, people notice leaves changing, fields growing, markets opening and closing, entire lives moving forward, while yours remains measured in scratches. You add another line to the wall. The tapping does not come for a long while. When it finally does, it is irregular, not the steady rhythm you have come to trust. 2. Pause. 1. Long silence. 2. Again. You answered gently, slower than usual, as if calm could pass through stone. Eventually the pattern steadies. You decide on a new meaning. For pain, you tap it once. After a long wait, for taps return, faint and uneven. You rest your forehead against the wall. No words exist here, yet understanding does. You tap one, alive, and wait. One returns. Night, or what passes for night, becomes restless. You begin hearing movements far down the corridor. Doors opening, voices murmuring, then silence again. The dungeon feels occupied in a different way, alert rather than asleep. At some point, torches burn longer than usual, their faint glow reaching under your door. The light feels intrusive, almost frightening after endless darkness. You watch it flicker until it disappears. Morning arrives with the familiar guard, the first one. You recognize his footsteps instantly and sit upright before he speaks. You are gone, you tell him. Not gone. Busy. He passes the food inside. Today there is a small piece of onion beside the bread. The sharp smell nearly overwhelms you. You stare at it. Why? He shrugs. Kitchen had extra. You suspect it is not random, but do not question further. You eat slowly, letting the taste linger as long as possible. Before leaving, he looks at your wall marks. You count days, he says. Yes, you'll stop eventually. Why? He studies you carefully. Because time stops meaning anything. After he leaves, you touch the newest scratch. The idea unsettles you. If counting stops, what replaces it? You cannot allow the dungeon to erase sequence without sequence. There is only endless present. And endless present is indistinguishable from oblivion. You decide to remember something specific each cycle. Today you remember a road, not where it led, only the rhythm of walking beside someone whose face you cannot see. The memory feels warm, steady. You repeat it until sleep comes. Before drifting away, you tap once. A moment later, one returns. And for the first time, the dungeon feels slightly less infinite. The next time you wake, the air is warmer. Not by much. The dungeon never truly warms, but the cold no longer bites your fingers the moment you move them. Instead, there is a dull heaviness, as if the stone itself has begun breathing slower. Even without seeing the sky, you sense a change above. Somewhere beyond the ceiling, the world has shifted. You sit up and stretch carefully. Your body has learned the limits of this space. You no longer stand quickly, no longer waste effort pacing. Every motion is deliberate now, measured to conserve strength. The dungeon teaches patience the way water shapes rock, gradually, without permission. The tapping does not come immediately. You wait longer than usual, listening past the familiar echoes of distant chains and the slow drip of water. Eventually you rest your hand against the wall and give a single, soft knock. Silence answers. You wait again. Then, faintly, so faintly you almost imagine it, one knock returns. Relief settles through you. Not joy, not excitement. Something calmer. Proof the world beyond your own thoughts still exists. You tap twice awake. After a delay, 2 taps back. The routine steadies you more than food ever could. It marks continuation. Continuation means survival. When the guard arrives, it is the heavier one. He slides the hatch open and pauses longer than normal. You moved your straw, he says. The water spreads. He nods and kneels to inspect the corner where damp darkens the floor. Ground rising, he mutters. Summer storms. So there are seasons after all. Does the sun shine today? You ask. He looks at you strangely, as though the question itself belongs to a different life. Bright enough, bright enough. The words linger after he leaves. You imagine sunlight filtering through leaves, creating shifting shapes. The memory feels distant, but real enough to hold for a while. You eat slowly. Hunger is no longer sharp, it is constant, like breathing. You no longer think of being full, only less empty. Hours pass, or what you decide are hours. Without light, time becomes an agreement you make with yourself. You begin creating patterns in your mind. After eating, you sit. After sitting, you stretch. After stretching, you tap the wall. After tapping, you remember something. Today, you remember wind. Not strong wind, gentle wind moving through tall grass. You recall the sound first, then the movement, then the feeling of it against your face. The memory fades quickly, but it leaves calm behind. The tapping returns sooner than expected. 3, 3, 1. You frown. The rhythm has changed. You answer carefully. 3. Food. That was yesterday's meaning. After a long pause, 3 comes again, slower. You realize, not a question, a statement. You tap 3 in reply. Yes. Minutes later, 2 taps. Awake. You respond to awake. The exchange continues without purpose, yet it fills the silence. Neither of you can speak, yet conversation forms, existence acknowledged again and again. Later, footsteps approach more than one pair. Voices murmur outside your door. You move back from it instinctively. The hatch opens. Torchlight spills in, brighter than you have seen before. You squint, eyes watering at the sudden glow. 2 men stand beyond your usual guard, and another whose boots sound sharper against the stone. The stranger does not look at you first. He studies the walls, the straw, the scratches, marking days. How long? He asks. The familiar guard shrugs. Long enough. The stranger finally meets your eyes. His expression is not cruel, but distant, like someone inspecting tools rather than a person. Can you stand? He asks. You hesitate, then rise slowly, steadying yourself against the wall. Your legs tremble but hold. He nods once. Good hope stirs, small and dangerous. You push it down immediately. The dungeon punishes expectation. Why? You ask. He ignores the question and gestures for the hatch to close again. Darkness returns instantly, swallowing the brief light so completely it almost feels imagined. Footsteps retreat. You remain standing for a long time afterward. Eventually you sit. You do not tap the wall. Not yet. Instead, you listen to your own breathing until it steadies. The visit meant something, but meaning is dangerous here. Meaning creates futures, and futures do not exist in a place built to hold only present moments. Still, when you finally tap once, the answering knock arrives quickly, alive. You press your forehead to the stone again. For the first time, the darkness feels uncertain, not weaker, but less absolute. You wake before the sounds begin. For a long time you lie still, unsure why your eyes opened, though in the dark, opening and closing them feels almost the same. Something has changed again, not the air, not the temperature, the silence. The dungeon is never truly silent. Water drips, chains shift, someone coughs in a distant corridor. But now there is a pause between those sounds, a waiting space, as though the stones themselves are listening. You sit up slowly. Your joints protest less than they once did. Your body has adapted to stillness. Movements that used to ache now feel ordinary, like the dungeon has trained you into its shape. You tap the wall once, nothing answers. You wait longer than usual, counting breaths the way you now count time. Then 2 taps. Alive, relief settles into your chest. You respond with 2 taps of your own. For a while the exchange continues, not rhythmic today, just occasional reassurance instead of conversation. Eventually footsteps pass your door but do not stop. Several pairs, voices echo, muffled and hurried. Metal clinks, not chains, but armor. You lean closer to the crack beneath the door. Faint air moves through it, carrying smells the dungeon rarely offers. Oil, leather, damp wool. Outside smells. Something is happening above. Hours later, or what you decide are hours, the hatch opens. Not the heavier guard, the younger one. He looks tired. He slides the bowl toward you without speaking. Today the food is different, thicker, warmer. You hold it in both hands, absorbing the heat before eating. Why more? You ask quietly. He hesitates, then shrugs. Many prisoners moved tomorrow. Roads must hold. Moved. The word spreads slowly through your thoughts. Moved where? He glances down the corridor before answering. Don't know. He closes the hatch too quickly for more questions. You do not eat immediately. Instead, you sit with the bowl warming your palms, feeling something unfamiliar, anticipation, fragile and uncomfortable. The dungeon has taught you not to expect change, yet change has begun without your permission. Eventually you eat, slowly, carefully, as always. Then you begin preparing, not for escape. You no longer imagine running through open fields, but for movement. You stretch longer than usual. You stand, sit, stand again. You walk the few steps your cell allows, memorizing balance. Your body remembers more than your mind does. You tap the wall 3 times. Pause. 3 taps return. You repeat them again. They answer. The rhythm steadies you. Perhaps they heard the footsteps too. Perhaps the entire dungeon now listens for morning. Time passes in thought instead of emptiness. You recall roads, not clearly, just the sensation of traveling them. Uneven ground beneath feet, the slight sway of walking beside others. The idea of direction. Direction has not existed here. At what you decide must be night. Noises above grow louder. A distant door slams. Someone shouts. Chains drag across stone floors. Somewhere far away. You do not sleep. Instead, you sit against the wall, conserving strength, waiting. Eventually, exhaustion pulls you into shallow dreams, not images, just impressions of movement and light. When you wake again, footsteps are already approaching. Many footsteps. They stop at your door. Bolts slide back one by one, louder than you have ever heard them. The door opens, not the hatch, the door itself. Torchlight floods the cell. You shield your eyes, overwhelmed by brightness. The heavier guard stands there with 2 others behind him. Up, he says simply. You rise. Your legs tremble, but hold. Cold iron closes around your wrists, heavier than you remember, but familiar. The guard watches carefully, expecting resistance. There is none. You step into the corridor. For the first time in longer than you can measure, you see beyond the stone frame of your cell. The passage stretches both directions, lined with doors identical to yours. Some open, some remain closed. You hear breathing from nearby cells. Someone coughs. Someone whispers a prayer. As they lead you forward, you pass the wall you tapped for so long. You pause instinctively. Before the guard can pull you on, you knock once against the stone. A faint knock answers from the other side. Alive. The guard tugs your chain. You continue walking, leaving the familiar darkness behind. Not toward freedom, but towards something unknown, which feels almost the same. The first thing I remember is the sound. Not the clang of the heavy iron door. I'd grown used to that. No, it was the screech of the hinges, a rusty, agonizing protest as they were forced open wider than they'd been in years. It was a sound that promised something different. Light, a sliver at first, then a blinding cascade, poured into my cell, striking the damp stone walls and making me recoil. My eyes, accustomed to the gloom, burned as if touched by fire. A hand, rough and impersonal, gripped my arm. There were no words, just a firm tug. I stumbled forward, my legs stiff and clumsy. The corridor was a blur of torches and shifting shadows. Each step was an effort, my bare feet slapping against the cold, uneven floor. The air changed. The familiar, damp, earthy smell of my confinement gave way to something else, something cleaner, sharper. It was the scent of cool air, of distance. We ascended a tight spiral staircase. With each turn, the light grew stronger, the air fresher. I kept my head down, shielding my eyes with a trembling hand. The guard's grip never loosened. He was a silent, immovable force, guiding me from one world to another. I could hear other sounds now, distant and muffled. The murmur of voices, the clatter of what might have been cartwheels on cobblestone, the faint high-pitched cry of a bird. These were ghost sounds, echoes of a life I barely remembered. Then we were there, the final door. This one was wood, splintered and heavy. It swung open, and I was pushed through. I fell to my knees, not from the push, but from the sheer, overwhelming assault on my senses. The world exploded in color and light. My vision swam. The sky, I'd forgotten the sky. It was a vast, impossible blue, streaked with thin white clouds. It was so big, so open, it felt like it was pressing down on me, suffocating me with its freedom. I squeezed my eyes shut, but the light bled through my eyelids in a searing red. I could feel the warmth of the sun on my face, a sensation so alien it was almost painful. It was like a gentle, persistent touch, chasing away the bone-deep chill that had been my constant companion for how long. I had lost count of the seasons, the years. When I finally dared to open my eyes again, I did so slowly, blinking away the tears that streamed down my cheeks. The world came into focus in fragments. A stone courtyard, grey walls topped with jagged, broken glass. More guards, their armor glinting in the sunlight. In the center of the yard, a single skeletal tree reached its bare branches towards the sky, a fellow prisoner trapped in stone. My guide led me across the courtyard to a wooden bench against the far wall. He pushed me down onto it, and then, for the first time, he let go. He stepped back, joining a group of other guards, leaving me alone in the vastness. I sat hunched, wrapping my thin arms around myself, a futile attempt to shrink back into the familiar smallness of my cell. Everything was too much. The gentle breeze that stirred my matted hair felt like 1,000 tiny needles on my scalp. The distant shout of a street vendor, the laughter of children playing somewhere beyond the walls, each sound was a hammer blow against the silence I had known. I watched a small brown bird land on a high wall, peck at something invisible, and then take flight, soaring into the endless blue. A pang of something sharp and bitter, something like envy, twisted in my gut. Other prisoners were brought out, one by one. They shared the same dazed, bewildered look, blinking against the light like creatures of the night, dragged into day. We were a collection of ghosts, pale and gaunt, sitting on benches scattered around the yard. We didn't speak. We didn't even look at each other for long. The experience was too personal, too overwhelming for shared communion. Each of us was lost in our own private universe of sensation. I spent what felt like hours just observing. I studied the intricate patterns of lichen growing on the stone walls. I watched the slow, deliberate march of an ant across a crack in the flagstones at my feet. These small, simple things were more real, more vibrant than anything I had seen in years. They were anchors in a dizzying sea of new information. The sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air grew cooler. The brilliant, harsh light softened into a gentle, golden glow. It was beautiful, terrifyingly beautiful. As the shadows lengthened, stretching across the courtyard like dark fingers, a guard brought us food, a hunk of coarse bread, and a tin cup of water for each of us. I took it with numb fingers. I ate slowly, mechanically. The bread was dry and tasteless, but it was substance. As I was chewing, the man on the bench next to me, a gaunt figure with hollow eyes, made a small sound. It was a soft, choked noise, halfway between a cough and a sob. He was staring at his piece of bread, as if it were a precious jewel. He broke off a tiny piece, no bigger than a thumbnail, and held it out to me. His hand trembled violently. I looked at him, then at the offered crumb. We were both starved, both broken. In this place, a crumb of bread was a feast. It was an act of profound, inexplicable generosity. I shook my head, pushing his hand gently back towards him. My throat was too tight to speak. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not just a fellow prisoner, but a person. There was a flicker of understanding in his tired eyes. He nodded slowly and ate the crumb himself. We sat there in the deepening twilight, two strangers sharing a silent moment of connection. It wasn't about the bread, it was about the offer. It was a recognition that even here, in this place of despair, a sliver of our humanity remained. As the last light faded from the sky and the first stars began to appear, the guards returned. The day was over. My brief, shocking exposure to the world was ending. The clang of the iron doors echoed in my memory, a promise of the night to come. But as they led me back towards the darkness, I carried something new with me. Not just the memory of the sun on my skin or the impossible blue of the sky, but the image of a trembling hand offering a crumb of bread. It was a tiny spark in an overwhelming darkness, but it was enough. It was hope. Morning does not arrive quietly here. In the dungeon, dawn was a rumor, something that happened to other people. Now it announces itself with noise long before light. Boots on mud, horses snorting, wooden buckets dragged across ground. The world wakes loudly, without care for those who would rather remain in darkness. You wake because others wake. Someone coughs beside you, a deep chest-rattling sound that seems older than the man himself. Another shifts in his sleep, and the chain at his ankle scrapes wood. The smell is different from the dungeon, still unwashed bodies, still stale straw, but mixed with open air and wet earth. Not cleaner, only wider. You open your eyes to a pale sky through the slats. For a moment you simply watch clouds move. They drift slowly, unconcerned with walls, schedules, or guards. You feel a strange uncertainty looking at them. Time outside behaves differently. It flows instead of collecting. A horn sounds. Every prisoner reacts at once, though not consciously. Bodies sit upright. Hands move to steady themselves before guards even appear. Habit forms quickly when disobedience once meant pain. The gate opens. 3 guards enter carrying a bucket and rough loaves of bread. No ceremony, no counting allowed. They toss food onto the ground between groups and step back, watching. No one rushes. Hunger exists, but so does caution. Prisoners wait half a heartbeat, long enough to prove they understand order, then lean forward to take their share. You pick up a piece hard, dark bread, baked days ago. You test it carefully before biting. Your teeth ache from the effort. It tastes like survival. A man near you dips his portion into the water bucket using both hands, softening it before eating. You copy him. The bread becomes swallowable, though flavor never appears. The guards observe without interest. To them this is maintenance, like feeding animals that must remain alive but not comfortable. After eating, you expect stillness again, but instead, shackles are unlocked from the wooden rail behind you. Ankles remain chained, wrists are freed, freedom with limits. A guard gestures toward the yard outside the shed. Up, you stand with others and step into morning air. The ground is cold beneath thin soles. Frost clings to shaded patches of dirt, crunching softly under movement. Work waits beyond the enclosure. You see tools stacked near a low cart, shovels, worn baskets, and wooden mallets. The purpose becomes clear before anyone explains it. The palisade wall surrounding this place needs repair. Some sections lean outward, weakened by rot and weather. The prisoners are here to fix it. You are handed a basket. Another man receives a shovel. Without instruction you begin carrying earth from a mound near the ditch to reinforce the base of the wall. Motion feels unfamiliar after confinement. Muscles tremble, then warm. No one speaks at first. The rhythm of labor establishes itself. Dig, lift, carry, dump, repeat. The guards stand apart, watching more for escape than for effort. The chains ensure none of you move quickly anyway. Hours pass measured by exhaustion rather than clocks. The sun rises higher, pale behind thin cloud. Sweat forms despite the cold. Your breathing grows louder in your own ears. Yet there is something unexpected within the work. Movement loosens the stiffness that once defined your body. You are tired in a living way, not the endless still fatigue of the dungeon. A prisoner beside you finally speaks, voice quiet so guards cannot hear clearly. Better than below, he murmurs. You consider before answering. Your shoulders ache, hands burn from rope handles, and your back protests every bend. Yes, you say, because pain that ends is kinder than stillness that never does. At midday, the horn sounds again. Work stops immediately. You return tools and sit along the interior wall of the yard. Food comes thinner this time, a small bowl of boiled grain passed between pairs. You share with the same man who spoke earlier. He does not ask your crime. You do not ask his. Here, identity matters less than endurance. Wind picks up during the afternoon. carrying distant scents, smoke from cooking fires somewhere beyond the palisade, livestock, damp grass. Each smell feels almost overwhelming after months of stone air. You find yourself distracted, pausing slightly too long while carrying earth. A guard notices. He taps your shoulder with a stick, not hard, only a reminder. You nod and resume pace. Punishment here is lighter but quicker. Discipline maintained before disobedience grows. By late day the repaired wall stands straighter. The ditch is filled deeper along its base. The guards inspect, exchange brief words, then signal completion. You return to the shed. Your legs shake as you lower yourself to the ground. Around you men stretch sore limbs carefully, discovering muscles long unused. A quiet atmosphere settles, not despair, not comfort, something between. Shared fatigue replaces isolation. Evening light fades through the slats. Someone begins humming softly. Not a tune you recognize, perhaps not even a song, just sound shaped to occupy silence. No guard stops it. The melody spreads, not sung together but accepted. You lie back, staring at darkening sky again. For the first time since waking in chains, sleep approaches naturally, not forced by exhaustion of fear, but by effort spent in the world beyond stone. Above you, clouds drift unseen in the night. Night arrives slowly, as if the world itself hesitates to darken this open place. The yard empties of movement one breath at a time. Guards finish their rounds. The last torch is planted near the gate, and its flame bends in the evening wind. Shadows lengthen across the ground, and then merge until everything becomes a single, uncertain gray. You lie on the straw, where you were told to rest. The ache in your body feels deeper tonight, but cleaner than the dungeon's pain. There, your muscles stiffened from stillness. Here, they complain from use. You are not sure which suffering you prefer, only that this one allows sleep to come more honestly. Somewhere nearby, a man whispers a prayer, not loudly, not for others, just words spoken into darkness so they do not remain trapped in the mind. Another prisoner answers with a different prayer in a different language. The sounds overlap briefly, then settle into quiet acceptance. Faith, like hunger, changes shape in captivity. You close your eyes, but the air keeps you awake longer than usual. It moves across your face, cold, carrying distant scents you cannot identify. After months underground, even wind feels almost suspicious, as though freedom itself were a trick. You sit up. Across the yard, past the fence, you see a faint glow from buildings beyond the palisade. People live there. People who eat at tables, who sleep in beds, who wake without chains. The thought does not hurt as much as expected. It feels distant, like remembering a story you once heard, rather than a life you once lived. A guard walks past, cloak wrapped tightly. He pauses when he notices you awake. "You'll need strength tomorrow," he says plainly, not unkindly. It is not advice. It is certainty. You lie down again. Sleep comes in fragments, short dreams broken by sounds of shifting bodies, coughing, and the occasional stamping of horses beyond the wall. Each time you wake, the sky above has moved slightly. The stars travel freely where you cannot. Before dawn, cold becomes sharper. You wake shivering, pulling straw closer beneath you. Around you others do the same without speaking. Shared discomfort has become a quiet routine. No one complains because no one expects change. Then, before light, something unusual happens. The gate opens early. Not the normal morning entry. This time only one guard enters, carrying a lantern and a small bundle of cloth. He walks along the row, studying faces. When the lantern reaches you, the light stings your eyes. He gestures you up. You stand slowly. The others watch without turning their heads, attention hidden but present. Being chosen rarely means comfort, but it always means difference. Your wrists are bound again, not tightly, not cruelly, simply secured. The guard leads you from the shed into the dim yard, where the sky still holds night. The world is silent, except for your footsteps and the faint clink of chain at your ankle. You expect interrogation. Instead, he leads you to a wooden trough near the well. Steam rises from water inside, warm, not hot. He hands you the cloth. "Wash," he says. You hesitate, uncertain. He waits, patient in the way of someone following orders, rather than giving personal instruction. Slowly you kneel and dip the cloth into the water. Dirt loosens from your hands first, turning the surface cloudy. You wipe your face next. The sensation feels almost shocking. Warmth against skin long accustomed to damp cold. You realize you had forgotten the feeling entirely. When you finish, he nods once and leads you onward, past the yard, past the outer gate. Outside the palisade, morning finally begins to show along the horizon. The village stands quiet in pale blue light. Smoke has not yet risen from chimneys. Doors remain closed. He stops at a small stone building near the road. Not a dungeon, not a house. Something between, official but simple. Inside waits a man in plain robes, seated at a table with parchment. He studies you briefly, not with curiosity, but with assessment, as though comparing you to a memory or description. "You can stand there," he says calmly. The guard removes your wrist binding, but remains at the door. The robed man dips a quill into ink. "Name?" he asks. The word feels strange after so long unused. You answer. He writes it down slowly, carefully shaping each letter. The scratching of quill on parchment fills the room. "For record," he explains. "Labor assignment rotation, not judgment, not sentence, administration." You realize then that imprisonment here is not only punishment, it is also inventory. Bodies measured, tracked, and moved where needed. You were not taken today for questioning or mercy. You were counted. The man sands the ink and rolls the parchment. "You'll work outside the south wall tomorrow," he says. "Road clearing." The guard nods. Your wrists are loosely bound again, and you are led back through the quiet village. The sky brightens, and the first rooster calls somewhere beyond sight. A door opens in the distance. A woman steps outside carrying a bucket, not noticing you pass. Life begins, indifferent to chains. Back inside the yard, the other prisoners are waking as you return. No one asks where you went. They read the answer in your clean face and damp hands. You lie down once more until the horn sounds. Today, you understand, will be different, but not because you are freer, because you have become part of the routine. Morning does not arrive with light alone. It arrives with sound, the heavy scrape of the outer gate, the hollow call of a horn, and the slow awakening of men who have learned not to startle. You open your eyes before the guard speaks, because by now your body understands the rhythm better than your thoughts do. Today the air is colder than yesterday. Frost clings to the packed earth, and each breath leaves your mouth in pale clouds. Around you, prisoners rise stiffly, wrapping rough cloaks around shoulders that have forgotten comfort but remember warmth. No one rushes. There is no advantage in haste. Work will last until it ends, not until it is finished. The guard reads names from a wooden tablet. When he says yours, you step forward. The rope binding your wrists is looped again, loose enough for movement, tight enough to remind you, and several others are led beyond the yard, past the gate, into the open morning. The village is fully awake now. Smoke lifts into the sky. Somewhere a child laughs, and the sound feels almost unreal after months of echoing stone. You walk south along a narrow path. The road clearing waits beyond a low hill where carts struggle during wet seasons. Winter has hardened the ground, but ruts remain frozen into place. A fallen tree blocks half the passage, its trunk grey and brittle with age. Tools lie nearby, axes, wedges, and a saw with iron teeth darkened by use. The guard gestures. "Work until the sun touches that ridge." He points to a distant rise. Time, measured by the sky again. You take the saw with another prisoner, an older man whose beard has turned nearly white. You have never spoken, yet shared labor creates a silent agreement. One pulls, the other guides. The blade bites slowly into wood, back and forth. The sound becomes steady, almost soothing. Wood dust gathers along your boots, muscles warm despite the cold. After months underground, effort feels different now, exhausting but clean. Pain that leaves the mind quieter rather than louder. The old man speaks eventually, voice low so only you hear. "Out here," he says. "The day passes faster." You nod. He glances at the guards. Not freedom, but closer to remembering it. You understand. In the dungeon, time had weight. Here, it moves with your breathing. Hours pass. The sun climbs. Frost softens into damp earth. Other prisoners wedge the trunk and strike with axes. Each crack echoes across the empty fields. Birds gather nearby, bold in their distance, watching as though human labor is a predictable season. When the tree finally splits, no one cheers. You simply stop sawing and rest hands on knees, breathing hard. The guard inspects the cut and gives a short approving grunt, the closest thing to praise that exists here. You are handed a bucket of water, not for drinking first, but for washing sap from your hands. Small mercies exist, not because they are given, but because work requires you intact enough to continue. Only after do you drink. Cold water tastes sharper than memory. You realize you once took it for granted, a thought that feels strange, because your past life grows less detailed each day, like paint fading from a wall. By afternoon the road lies clear. Wheels will pass more easily now. Merchants will not know the names of those who cut the wood. Travelers will never imagine the chains that move to make their journey smoother. You sit briefly while guards speak among themselves. The old man beside you leans back, face turned toward the sun. "I was a cooper," he murmurs. "Barrels for wine. Good work. Measured, patient. You wait." He smiles faintly. "Here. Still measured, still patient. Different barrels." He does not explain further. He does not need to. Soon the rope tugs your wrists again. Return. The walk back feels shorter, though your legs tremble with effort. The village watches less now. You are no longer spectacle. You are part of background motion, as ordinary as carts and livestock. Inside the yard, the evening meal is already prepared. You eat sitting on the ground, slower than before. Hunger remains, but not the frantic kind born of darkness. Labor has reshaped it into something steadier. The guard who first woke you days ago passes near. "You worked well," he says quietly. Not kindness, not friendship, recognition. You nod once. Night settles. You lie down on straw that no longer feels like an insult, but simply a place to rest. Muscles ache deeply, yet sleep comes quickly. No chains scrape stone. No water drips endlessly. Only distant wind and breathing around you. For the first time since your capture, you dream of nothing at all. And in this place, emptiness is the closest thing to peace. The air was different this morning. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the chill that usually seeped through the stone walls of my cell was gone. I sat up on my cot, the rough blanket suddenly feeling too heavy. A weak, pale sunlight filtered through the high, barred window, and it carried a warmth I hadn't felt in months. Winter was finally loosening its grip on this fortress. It was a small change, but in here, small changes are everything. The usual sounds of the prison began to echo through the corridors, the clanging of metal doors, the distant shouts of guards, the shuffling of 100 pairs of worn-out boots. Another day had begun. The morning routine was a ritual etched into my bones. Wake up, fold the blanket, stand for the count. The guards moved with a practiced indifference, their faces grim and unreadable. Their footsteps were heavy, authoritative, a constant reminder of where we were. We were marched to the mess hall, the long, bleak room filled with the low hum of conversations and the scrape of spoons against metal trays. The food was what you'd expect, bland, lukewarm gruel, but it was fuel. I ate quickly, my eyes scanning the familiar faces around me. Each man was an island, lost in his own thoughts, his own memories of a life that felt like a distant dream. There were no real friendships here, only temporary alliances born of necessity. We were all just trying to make it to the next sunrise. After the meal, we were herded back to our cells for the morning lockdown. I sat on my cot, staring at the grey stone walls, tracing the cracks and imperfections with my eyes. These 4 walls had become my entire world. I knew every stain, every chip, every shadow that danced across the surface as the sun made its slow journey across the sky. In the silence, my mind would often drift back to the world outside, to the life I once had. The memories were a double-edged sword, a source of comfort and a source of unbearable pain. I tried to push them away, to focus on the here and now. Surviving in this place meant living one moment at a time, one breath at a time. It meant becoming as hard and unfeeling as the stone that surrounded me. Just as I was settling into the familiar monotony, the sound of boots stopped outside my cell, not the usual patrol. This was different. A key turned in the lock, and the heavy door groaned open. A guard stood there, his expression impassive. "On your feet," he barked. My heart hammered against my ribs. An unexpected summons could mean anything: a shakedown, a transfer, or worse. I rose slowly, my mind racing through the possibilities. He led me out of the cell block, not towards the usual areas, but deeper into the fortress, towards the inner keep. This was a part of the prison I had never seen before. The corridors were cleaner, the air less stale. The silence here was heavier, more profound. We stopped in front of a heavy oak door. The guard knocked once and pushed it open, gesturing for me to enter. I stepped into a small, sparsely furnished office. A man sat behind a large wooden desk, a clerk by the look of his spectacles and the neat stacks of paper in front of him. He didn't look up immediately, his quill scratching across a ledger. The room smelled of old paper and ink. Finally, he set down his quill and peered at me over his glasses. His eyes were cold and analytical, as if he were assessing a piece of livestock. "Name?" he asked, his voice dry and emotionless. I gave it to him. He scanned a document, his finger tracing a line of text. "You've been assigned to yard duty," he announced, without a hint of expression. "Report to the main yard after midday meal. Don't be late." And just like that, I was dismissed. The guard led me back, the journey feeling even longer this time. Yard duty. It meant hours under the open sky, hauling stones and digging trenches under the watchful eyes of the tower guards. It was hard, back-breaking labor, but it was also a change. It was a break from the crushing confinement of the cell block. When the midday meal was over, I joined the line of men shuffling towards the main yard. The massive gates creaked open, and for the first time in months, I stepped out into the open air. The sky was a vast, brilliant blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds. The sun felt warm on my skin, a glorious, life-affirming sensation. The yard was a chaotic scene of controlled labor, but to me, it felt like freedom. I was handed a shovel and pointed towards a pile of earth. The work was grueling. My muscles, soft from months of inactivity, screamed in protest. My hands, unaccustomed to the rough wood of the shovel, quickly blistered. Sweat poured down my face, stinging my eyes, but I kept digging. With every shovelful of dirt, I felt a strange sense of purpose. I was doing something, creating something, even if it was just a ditch in a prison yard. I worked alongside the other men, a silent camaraderie forming between us as we toiled under the sun. We were cogs in a machine, but for these few hours, we were alive. We were more than just numbers in a ledger. As the day drew to a close, the guards called a halt to the work. We were exhausted, covered in dirt and sweat, but there was a different kind of tiredness in my bones. It was the satisfying ache of a day's hard labor, not the soul-crushing lethargy of confinement. As we were herded back towards the cell blocks, I paused for a moment and looked back. The sun was setting, painting the western sky in fiery strokes of orange, pink, and purple. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a stark contrast to the grim reality of the fortress. It was a sight I hadn't seen in so long, a reminder that there was still beauty in the world, even in a place like this. Back in my cell, as darkness fell, a new feeling settled over me. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was something close. It was the quiet, stubborn resilience of a weed pushing its way through a crack in the pavement. I had survived another winter. I had survived another day, and I knew, with a certainty that calmed my weary soul, that I would survive the next. Morning arrives with rain, not the violent storm that rattles doors and sends guards shouting, but a steady fall, patient, unhurried. You hear it before you see it, tapping the courtyard stones in a rhythm older than the fortress itself. The air smells clean in a way the dungeon never allowed, washing dust and rot from the senses. When the door opens, the usual rush toward bread slows. No one wants to step into cold water unless ordered. A guard laughs quietly and waves you forward anyway. Outside, the yard has changed. Mud replaces hard ground. The cart tracks are shallow rivers, and each step sinks slightly before releasing with a soft pull. Your boots grow heavier with every movement, yet the air feels strangely lighter. Even prisoners breathe deeper. Today, ropes are not brought. Instead, tools, wooden buckets, worn brushes, and long-handled scrapers are handed out. The work is simple, clearing drainage channels along the inner walls so water does not gather and weaken the stone. Necessary labor, not punishment. You kneel beside a narrow trench, rain sliding down your neck, cold at first, then merely present. Across from you works a younger prisoner, barely more than a boy. He keeps glancing upward, blinking as drops hit his face. "Never seen rain without bars," he murmurs, half to himself. You almost answer, then realize you understand him. The dungeon turns weather into rumor. Down there, seasons are stories carried on boots and cloaks. Up here, they are undeniable. Hours pass in steady motion, scrape, lift, pour. Mud coats your hands, but the rhythm settles your mind. Around you, conversation rises and fades. Not loud, never careless, but no longer silent either. A guard walks the perimeter, hood pulled low. "You," he calls suddenly, pointing toward you and two others. Inside storage, you follow him beneath an overhang and into a side chamber. It smells of grain and rope rather than damp stone. Barrels line the walls. He gestures toward them. Stack properly. Last men left gaps. Rats made feast. You begin lifting sacks, feeling their dry weight shift across your shoulders. Compared to hauling stone, the work feels almost gentle. Each sack placed closes another space, building order from neglect. While you work, the guard remains nearby, not watching closely, but not leaving either. After some time he speaks, voice neutral. Fortress was fuller last winter. War rumors filled cells faster than thieves. You say nothing, unsure if reply is expected. He continues anyway. Rumors fade. Hunger stays. His words carry no threat, only observation. By midday, the rain weakens to mist. You step back into the yard, steam rising faintly from the ground as the world warms. The clouds thin, revealing pale light. The old man sits beneath the wall, hands resting on his knees, not working, resting, openly. No guard corrects him. His age has earned a different measure. You've begun to belong to the routine, he says as you pass. Belong. The word unsettles you more than chains ever did. Afternoon work ends early. Tools are collected without urgency. Bread today comes with thin broth, carried in a large pot. You cup it carefully, feeling heat seep into your palms. Around you, men sit instead of crouched. The yard has become, if not safe, then predictable. That night, sleep comes quickly. Rain resumes, softer now, tapping the roof above your chamber. The sound fills spaces where fear once lived. You no longer count hours in darkness. You drift through them. Before sleep fully claims you, a thought forms, not hope, not despair, understanding. The dungeon did not change. The guards did not grow kind. Yet time has reshaped how you exist within the walls. And tomorrow, for the first time since waking in chains, you expect to wake again. For months, the only sky we knew was a sliver of grey, framed by the fortress walls. Our world was stone, shadow, and the echo of our own footsteps. Days bled into one another, each one a carbon copy of the last. Hope was a currency we'd long since spent, and the world outside became a half-forgotten dream. Then, one morning, the routine shattered. The guards' shouts were different, sharper. Instead of the usual drudgery, they herded us out of the main yard, not towards the workshops, but towards a gate we'd only ever seen sealed. A wave of confusion rippled through the lines of great-lad men. Rumors flew in hushed whispers. A transfer, a special punishment. The air was thick with a tension that was almost electric, a mix of fear and a tiny forbidden spark of curiosity. The heavy iron gate groaned open, revealing a path we'd never walked. It led upwards, winding along the outer shell of the fortress. The climb was steep, and our legs, accustomed to the flat ground of the yard, protested with every step. But with each foot of elevation, something changed. The air grew fresher, losing the stale, damp smell of the cells, and carrying a hint of salt from the distant sea. The familiar, oppressive ceiling of stone and iron bars was gone. In its place, the sky began to open up, wider and wider, a brilliant, aching blue that we hadn't seen in what felt like a lifetime. We reached the top, the rampart, a wide walkway of stone overlooking the world. We were there to work, to repair a section of the wall that had crumbled. But for the first few moments, no one moved. We just stood there, speechless, like men seeing the sun for the first time. The horizon was a clean, sharp line in the distance, a concept that had become almost mythical. The world didn't end at a stone wall. It stretched on forever. Below us, fields unfolded in a patchwork of green and gold. A winding river glinted like a silver ribbon. Tiny farmhouses puffed smoke from their chimneys, signaling lives being lived, lives completely separate from our own. A flock of birds soared past, their wings catching the wind, a perfect, effortless display of the very freedom we had lost. We were handed tool trowels, buckets of mortar, heavy stones. The work was hard, our hands clumsy and soft from disuse. But as we worked, a strange thing happened. The vastness around us began to seep in. It wasn't just a view. It was a memory trigger. A man next to me, a quiet fellow I barely knew, paused, staring at a distant patch of forest. He whispered, "I used to go mushroom picking with my daughter in woods, just like that." His voice was thick with emotion, and I just nodded, understanding completely. I saw another man, a hardened criminal with a face like a roadmap of bad decisions, trace the line of the coast with his finger. A faint smile touched his lips, and he had to wonder what he was seeing. Was it a childhood trip to the beach, a stolen moment with a loved one by the sea? The wind, whipping round us, carried the scent of pine and damp earth, and with it, a flood of personal ghosts. I remembered the feeling of grass under my bare feet, the taste of a fresh apple picked straight from a tree, the warmth of my wife's hand in mine. These weren't just memories. They were proof that we had existed before this place, that we were more than just numbers in a ledger. We were sons, fathers, lovers, and friends. For those few hours on the wall, under the immense, indifferent sky, we weren't just prisoners. We were men, reminded of the vast, beautiful world that was still out there, waiting. The work was grueling, but no one complained. The physical ache was a welcome distraction, a grounding force against the emotional storm raging within each of us. When the sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and purple, the guards called an end to the work. The descent back into the fortress was silent, heavy. The iron gate clanged shut behind us, and the familiar shadows wrapped around us once more. The sliver of sky above the yard seemed smaller, more mocking than before. We were back in the cage, but something was different. That night, the usual despair in the air was lighter. You could see it in the men's eyes. We had seen the horizon. We had felt the wind. We knew the world was still there. And that simple, powerful knowledge was enough to rekindle a flicker of hope in the darkest of places. It was a reminder that even when your world shrinks to the size of a cell, the real world, in all its vastness, never truly forgets you. The rain began just after dawn, a soft drumming on the slate roof that promised to stay. From my small window, the world outside was a wash of grey and green. The stone walls of the fortress, ancient and weathered, seemed to drink in the moisture, their color deepening to a dark, somber charcoal. The courtyard below was empty, its cobblestones slick and shining. Puddles were already forming, mirroring the heavy sky. It was the kind of day that seeps into your bones, a day for staying inside, for quiet work and reflection. The old man was already up, of course. I found him in the great hall, the air thick with the smell of damp stone and wood smoke. A fire crackled in the massive hearth, its light dancing across his weathered face, carving deep shadows into the lines around his eyes. He didn't look up when I entered, just gestured with his chin toward a mountain of sacks piled against the far wall. It was grain day. The work was simple, but endless. Sorting, we had to separate the good kernels from the chaff, the pebbles, and the unfortunate insects that had found their way into our winter stores. He handed me a wide, shallow basket. The rhythm was easy to fall into. Scoop, shake, and sift. The light grains and dust would fly up in a small cloud, while the heavier good kernels would rattle against the woven willow. My fingers, still clumsy with sleep, slowly remembered the motion. The only sounds were the crackle of the fire, the steady whisper of the rain outside, and the rhythmic rustle of grain. The old man worked in silence, his movements economical and precise, a dance he had perfected over countless rainy days just like this one. Sometimes, I would watch him. His hands, gnarled and brown, moved with a grace that belied their age. He could tell a good grain from a bad one by feel alone, his thumb rubbing over the kernels with a practiced touch. He never rushed. There was a patience in him that seemed as deep and as old as the fortress itself. He was a part of this place, or perhaps it was a part of him. I often wondered about the stories those hands could tell, the harvests they had brought in, the walls they had helped mend. But he was not a man for stories. He was a man of quiet action, of predictable, comforting routines. Hours passed. The pile of sorted grain grew steadily, a small golden hill beside us. My back began to ache from sitting hunched over on the low stool, and my eyes stung from the dust. The rain outside never faltered. It was a constant presence, a liquid curtain that separated our small, warm world from the cold, wet wilderness beyond the walls. It was calming, in a way. The endless drumming meant there was nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. There was only this room, this fire, this task. The world was simplified, reduced to the essential. Around midday, the old man rose without a word and disappeared into the kitchens. He returned a short while later with 2 wooden bowls of hot, thick porridge and a loaf of dark, heavy bread. We ate by the fire, the silence between us comfortable. The warmth of the food spread through me, chasing away the persistent chill. I could hear the wind picking up, whistling through the arrow slits high in the walls, a mournful counterpoint to the rain's steady beat. The great hall, which could feel vast and empty on sunny days, now felt like a sanctuary, a cozy firelit cave. After we ate, the task changed. The old man pointed to the floor. The rushes, which served as our carpet, were old and flattened, smelling faintly of dust and decay. It was time to replace them. We gathered the old rushes into bundles, our movements stirring up a cloud of fragrant herbal dust. It smelled of dried summers, of meadowsweet and yarrow. We carried them out to the kitchens to be burned, the brief trip exposing us to the cold, misty air of the connecting corridor. The rain was falling harder now, lashing against the stone. Back in the warmth of the hall, the old man unbarred a small, low door I rarely noticed. It led to a dry storage cellar, cool and smelling of earth and roots. Stacks of fresh rushes were piled high, harvested late last summer and dried for this very purpose. We carried them up, armful after armful, their scent clean and sweet, a promise of green things and sunshine. We spread them across the stone floor, the thick new layer muffling our footsteps, transforming the space. The simple act felt like a renewal, a small but significant victory against the gloom of the day. As we worked, I thought about the fortress. Generations had lived within these walls, had performed these same tasks. They had sorted grain, spread rushes, and listened to the rain, just as we were. There was a sense of connection, of being part of a long, unbroken chain. This place wasn't just a pile of stones. It was a vessel for memory, holding the echoes of every life lived within it. The rain wasn't just weather. It was the metronome marking the slow, steady pulse of time. By late afternoon, our work was done. The fire was burning low, and the light filtering through the high windows was fading fast. The great hall was clean and orderly, smelling of wood smoke and fresh rushes. A deep sense of satisfaction settled over me, the quiet pride of a day well spent. The old man was sitting in his high-backed chair by the hearth, his eyes closed, though I knew he wasn't sleeping. He was just being, listening, resting. I walked back to my room, the new rushes soft beneath my feet. The rain had gentled again, returning to the soft, persistent patter of the morning. The sky was a deep, bruised purple. I didn't light a candle. Instead, I just sat on the edge of my bed, looking out the window at the deepening twilight. The world was dissolving into shadows. The outline of the distant hills, the shapes of the trees, the very stones of the courtyard, all were softening, melting into the night. And in the quiet, I felt it, a profound sense of peace. The day's work was done. My body was tired, but my mind was calm. The rain was a lullaby, washing the world clean. There was no need for words, no need for light. There was only the sound of water falling on ancient stone, the coolness of the air, and the steady beat of my own heart. I wasn't waiting for the rain to stop. I wasn't wishing for the sun. I was just here, in this moment, a small part of the fortress, a small part of the night, and it was enough. The silence down here has a weight to it. It's not the quiet of a library, or the hush of a winter morning. It's a dense, ancient silence, made of stone and time. It presses in, filling your ears until you can almost hear the slow, geological pulse of the earth itself. I've been here I've stopped counting the days. The sun is a memory, a story I tell myself. Up there, I imagine the world is loud, full of color and motion. Down here, the world is gray. The walls are my companions, their surfaces cool and rough against my fingertips. I've traced every crack, every vein of quartz, every patch of damp moss. They are the pages of a book written in a language older than words. Time behaves differently in the deep places. It doesn't march forward in a straight line. It pulls, it eddies, it seeps. Sometimes, an entire day feels like a single, held breath. Other times, a week rushes by in a blur of indistinguishable shadows. My only clock is the drip, drip, drip of water from the ceiling into a small puddle in the corner. Each drop is a tiny event, a punctuation mark in the endless sentence of my solitude. I listen to its rhythm, a slow, patient metronome, counting out the seconds of my life. It's a sound that could drive a person mad, but for me, it's a comfort. It's proof that something, anything, is still moving. I remember light. I remember the warmth of the sun on my skin, the shocking blue of the sky, the way the wind would stir the leaves in the trees, making them dance. These memories are like ghosts. They visit me in the darkest hours, shimmering just at the edge of my vision. Are they real? Or are they just fragments of dreams I've woven together to keep the darkness at bay? Sometimes I'm not sure. The line between what was and what is has become blurred, like watercolor left in the rain. Down here, reality is what you can touch. The cold stone, the damp earth, the rough spun cloth of my clothes. Everything else is just a story. There are other sounds, if you listen closely enough. The scuttling of unseen things in the walls, the sigh of air moving through unseen passages far away, the groan of the stone itself. settling under the immense weight of the world above. I've learned to read these sounds. The faint scurrying means the rats are active. A low hum that vibrates through the floor means it's raining up there, the water saturating the ground. These are my connections to a world I can no longer see, tiny threads of information that keep me from disappearing completely into the silence. I often wonder about the hands that built this place. Who were they? Did they imagine someone like me, sitting here, centuries later, tracing the marks of their chisels? I run my fingers over the tool marks, feeling the history in them. Each gouge and scrape is a testament to a life, a moment of effort frozen in stone. These unknown builders are my other companions. In a way, they're still here with me. Their sweat and labor are part of the very air I breathe. They shaped this space, and now, this space is shaping me. It's carving away the person I used to be, leaving something harder, quieter, more like the stone itself. My world has shrunk to the dimensions of this cell. It's a small kingdom, but it's mine. I know its geography intimately. The northern wall, always the coldest. The southern corner, where the puddle forms. The ceiling, a low, oppressive sky of granite. I pace its length, 10 steps one way, 10 steps back. It's a ritual, a small act of defiance against the stillness. My footsteps echo, a brief, lonely conversation with the emptiness. They are my voice, my declaration that I am still here, still moving, still breathing in this kingdom of silence and stone. Sometimes, in the deepest quiet, a kind of peace settles over me. The anxiety, the longing, the memories, they all recede. It's just me and the stone and the dark. In these moments, I feel a strange sense of belonging, as if I'm not a prisoner, but a part of this place. A hermit in a subterranean monastery. The world outside, with all its noise and chaos, seems distant and unreal. This, the solid, unchanging, silent world, feels like the only true thing. It's a stark and lonely kind of peace, but it's a peace nonetheless. It's the peace of letting go. I've started to see patterns in the darkness. When I close my eyes, it's not just black. There are shifting shapes, faint glows, webs of faint light, like phosphorescence in a deep ocean. They are the phantoms of sight, my mind painting pictures on the canvas of the dark. I watch them for hours. These private light shows, they are my stars, my clouds, my sunsets. My imagination has become my window to the universe. It has to be. When the world outside is taken from you, you learn to build a new one inside. And my world is vast, even if its borders are made of cold, unyielding stone. What will become of me? Will I simply fade away, my bones turning to dust and mingling with the dirt floor? Will someone, someday, find this place and wonder about the person who lived and died here? Or will I just become another layer of silence, another story absorbed by the ancient stone? I don't know, and I've found that I don't fear the answer anymore. Fear is a luxury of the hopeful. Down here, there is only acceptance. I am a part of the dungeon's story now. My breath mists on the cold air. My warmth seeps slowly into the walls. My time dissolves into the eternal now of the deep earth. I sit and listen. I listen to the water drop, a liquid clock. I listen to the stone breathe, a slow, patient exhalation that spans eons. I listen to the silence, and in its depths, I hear the echo of my own heartbeat. Thump thump, a steady, stubborn rhythm. It's the sound of life. A small, persistent life, beating on in the heart of the stone. And for now, that is enough. It has to be enough. I am here, I am listening, and I am waiting. Morning comes with warmth, not sunlight, not yet, but the softer warmth of air that no longer bites your skin when you breathe. Somewhere beyond the walls, the season has shifted a little. You cannot see it, but your body knows. You wake naturally. No bell, no noise, just awareness returning slowly, like ripples settling on water. The boy still sleeps. The old man sits with his eyes closed, hands resting loosely on his knees. For a moment you think he is asleep too, until he speaks. Feel that, he asks quietly. The air. He nods. Winter loosens its grip. You sit up. The stone beneath you feels less hostile today. Still hard, still cold, but no longer determined to push warmth out of you. The bell rings soon after. Morning duties begin calmly. No rushing footsteps, no sharp orders. Even the guards move at an unhurried pace, as though the day itself has agreed to be simple. You are sent to the courtyard to scrub mud from yesterday's paths. The ground has dried into soft patterns left by boots and water streams. Each pass of your brush erases a little of yesterday. The boy works beside you, humming under his breath. You do not recognize the melody, but it repeats often enough to feel older than both of you. Do you remember where you learned that? You ask. He shrugs. It feels like remembering, but I don't know from where. The old man overhears. Some memories belong to no moment. He says, they stay even when details leave. Sunlight finally appears, thin, pale, stretching across the courtyard floor. You notice dust drifting through it, countless tiny shapes moving freely where nothing else can. You pause, watching them longer than you intend. No one interrupts. Later, you help carry water again. The rope feels smoother in your hands now, calluses doing their quiet work. The bucket rises steadily. You no longer dread its weight. At the well's edge, you hear distant voices outside the walls, travelers passing the road beyond the fortress. Faint, indistinct, but undeniably free. The boy listens to. He does not look sad this time. They sound busy. He says, yes. He nods thoughtfully. Busy means they're living. Midday rest comes beneath clear sky. For the first time, you sit in open light without searching for shade. Warmth rests on your shoulders, simple and complete. The old man leans back against the stone. You stop counting days eventually, he says. Then you start noticing moments instead. You understand. A passing cloud cools the ground for a few seconds. You notice. A guard yawns while pretending not to. You notice. The smell of bread from storage drifting into the yard. You notice. Small things fill time better than fear ever did. Afternoon work is indoors, repairing worn rope. Fibers twist together slowly under your fingers. The repetitive motion quiets the mind until thoughts move gently, without urgency. The boy struggles at first, then improves. Each knot steadier than the last. Good, the old man tells him. Hands learn patience before the mind does. Evening approaches softly. No dramatic sky, only fading blue turning gray. The fortress looks almost peaceful in this light, less like a prison, more like an old structure that simply exists. Supper is quiet. People eat without hurry. Afterward, no one speaks for a long time. You realize silence here has changed. It used to feel heavy, full of worry. Now it feels complete, needing nothing added. The boy lies down and watches the ceiling. I don't think I'm afraid tonight, he says. Why, you ask? He considers carefully. Because tomorrow will probably be the same. The old man smiles faintly. Sameness is underrated comfort. Night deepens. No storms, no distant shouts, no sudden sounds. Only the occasional shift of someone turning in sleep and the soft movement of air through stone. You rest your head back. Your thoughts no longer race toward, escape, or past mistakes or unknown futures. They drift gently, like dust in sunlight earlier, moving without purpose, yet not lost. Before sleep takes you, you notice something unexpected. You are not waiting anymore. Not for release, not for answers, not even for morning. You are simply here, breathing, resting, continuing. And for the first time since arriving, that feels enough for the night. And so you sleep deeply, while the fortress keeps its quiet watch around you. You wake too quiet. Not the heavy quiet of deep night, but the pale quiet that exists just before morning decides to arrive. The kind where even the guards move softly, and chains rest without sound, and breath itself feels louder than it should. For a moment, you do not remember where you are. Then the stone reminds you, cool beneath your hand, patient beneath your back. The boy is still asleep beside the wall, wrapped in the same shared blanket as before. The old man watches the narrow slit of sky, its color neither black nor blue yet, only a thin promise of light. You woke before the bell, he whispers. So did you. He smiles faintly. I wake before most things. A draft slides through the corridor, carrying a scent you have not noticed in many days. Wet earth. It rained long into the night. You can hear droplets still falling from roof edges into puddles below, slow and steady, like time measuring itself. The bell rings, softer this morning, or perhaps the air simply carries it differently. The guards opened the gate earlier than usual. Dawn is grey and silver, clouds low but thinning. Everything looks washed, cleaner than yesterday, though the walls remain as old as ever. Today the courtyard mud grips your boots. Work begins with sweeping water from the stone paths. You push a wide wooden broom beside the boy, guiding small rivers toward drains cut along thedges. The motion is easy, almost gentle. The water moves willingly, unlike most things here. Look, the boy says quietly. A bird lands atop the wall, small, brown, ordinary. It hops along the stones, shakes its wings, and disappears again beyond sight. He watches the empty place long after it has gone. They don't stay, he says. No, you reply. They only visit. He seems satisfied with that. Later, you carry damp firewood into storage to dry. The smell fills the room, bark, rain, and fresh air trapped inside rough logs. It almost feels like a forest lives briefly within the fortress. The old man handles each piece carefully. Even wood remembers trees, he murmurs. Time changes shape, not origin. Midday light breaks through the clouds. For the first time in days, shadows return, faint but clear enough to follow across the ground. You sit during rest with your back to the wall, feeling warmth reach you slowly. The boy stretches his hands into sunlight, as if warming them over a fire. I think I forgot this feeling, he says. You didn't forget, the old man replies. You only paused remembering. A cart arrives again, fewer supplies this time. The guards speak briefly among themselves. Their tone is neutral, routine, but something about it carries distance, as if their thoughts are elsewhere beyond the walls. You notice one guard staring out the gate longer than usual before closing it. Afternoon passes in quieter tasks, sorting rope, folding worn cloth, carrying empty buckets. Repetition settles into your muscles until movement requires almost no decision. You realize you no longer count hours, only changes. Light to dim, noise to stillness, hunger to rest. Near evening the boy asks you something unexpected. If we left, would this place continue? You look around at stone worn smooth by generations, at iron darkened by hands long gone, at marks carved by people whose names never remained. Yes, you say, places do not wait for memory. He nods slowly. Then maybe that's all right. Supper is warm tonight, thin stew, but hot. Steam rises into cool air, and for a moment everyone eats in peaceful silence. Even the guards seem less sharp, as though the day required little from them. The old man finishes and leans back. Some days exist only to rest between harder ones, he says. Value them more. Darkness approaches without drama. The clouds drift apart, revealing a few pale stars through the narrow openings above. Not many, just enough to prove the sky still stretches endlessly somewhere beyond the stone. The boy lies down early. You remain awake longer than usual, listening. No storms tonight, no distant thunder. Only wind moving along corridors, and the quiet breathing of many sleepers sharing the same night. You've changed, the old man says softly. So have you, he chuckles. No, I have only continued. You think about that. Perhaps survival is not becoming stronger, or braver, or harder. Perhaps it is simply continuing one morning to the next, until fear grows tired of following. The torches fade. One by one, sounds disappear. You close your eyes, not to escape the darkness, but to rest inside it, familiar now, measured, almost gentle. And as sleep arrives, the fortress does not feel smaller, only farther away from the person who first entered it. Morning arrives with a sense of warmth. It's not the sunlight, not yet, but the softer warmth of air that no longer bites your skin when you breathe. Somewhere beyond these imposing stone walls, the season has shifted, even just a little. You can't see the change, but your body knows. It's an internal knowledge, a quiet signal that something is different today. You wake naturally. There's no jarring bell, no sudden noise to pull you from your sleep, just a slow return to awareness, like ripples settling on the calm surface of water. The boy, your constant companion in this place, still sleeps, his breath even and deep. The old man sits nearby with his eyes closed, his hands resting loosely on his knees. For a fleeting moment, you think he is asleep too, lost in his own dreams. But then he speaks, his voice a quiet murmur that doesn't break the stillness. Feel that? He asks, his voice barely a whisper. You don't need to ask what he means. You do feel it. The air, you reply. He nods, a slow, deliberate movement. Winter loosens its grip. You sit up. The stone floor beneath you feels less hostile today. It's still hard, still cold, but it no longer feels as if it's actively trying to leach the warmth out of you. There's a subtle truce between your body and the unyielding stone. The bell rings soon after, its chime echoing through the fortress. But today, it doesn't sound like a command. Morning duties begin with a surprising calm. There are no rushing footsteps echoing down the corridors, no sharp orders barked by the guards. Even they seem to move at an unhurried pace, as though the day itself has made an unspoken agreement to be simple, to be gentle. You are sent to the courtyard to scrub mud from yesterday's paths. The ground has dried, leaving behind soft, intricate patterns left by countless boots and streams of water. With each pass of your brush, you feel like you are erasing a small piece of yesterday, clearing the way for today. The boy works beside you, humming a tune under his breath. You don't recognize the melody, but it repeats often enough that it feels ancient. Older than both of you, older than the walls around you. Do you remember where you learned that song? You ask, your curiosity piqued. He shrugs, his small shoulders rising and falling. It feels like I'm remembering it, he says, but I don't know from where. The old man, who has been quietly observing, overhears your exchange. Some memories belong to no single moment, he says, his voice carrying the weight of years. They stay with us, even when all the details have left. His words hang in the air, offering a strange kind of comfort. And then, sunlight finally appears. It's thin and pale at first, stretching like long fingers across the courtyard floor. As it touches the air, you notice dust motes drifting through the beams. Countless tiny shapes moving freely in a space where nothing else can. They dance and swirl, catching the light in a silent, beautiful ballet. You find yourself pausing, watching them for longer than you intend to, and for the first time, no one interrupts you. The moment is yours. Later, you are tasked with carrying water again. The rope feels smoother in your hands now. The calluses, once a source of pain, are now doing their quiet, protective work. The bucket rises steadily from the well. You no longer dread its weight. You have grown accustomed to it, stronger because of it. At the well's edge, a new sound reaches you. Distant voices from outside the walls. Travelers passing on the road that runs beyond the fortress. Their words are faint, indistinct, but they are undeniably free. The boy listens to, his head tilted. But this time, he doesn't look sad. There's no longing in his eyes. They sound busy, he says, a note of simple observation in his voice. Yes, you agree. He nods thoughtfully. Busy means they're living. Midday rest comes beneath a clear, open sky. For the first time, you choose to sit in the direct light, not searching for a patch of shade. The warmth rests on your shoulders, a simple and complete sensation. It feels like a gift. The old man leans back against the stone wall, a picture of contentment. You stop counting the days, eventually, he says, his eyes closed against the sun. Then you start noticing the moments instead, and you understand exactly what he means. A passing cloud cools the ground for a few seconds and you notice a guard, trying to stay alert, stifles a yawn, and you notice the faint, comforting smell of bread baking. Somewhere in the storage rooms drifts into the yard and you notice these small, seemingly insignificant things begin to fill the vast expanse of time, doing a much better job than fear ever did. The afternoon's work is indoors, repairing worn-out rope. The fibers twist together slowly under your fingers. It's a repetitive motion, a task that quiets the mind until your thoughts move gently, without their usual urgency. The boy struggles at first, his small hands fumbling with the thick strands. But then, he gets the hang of it. Each knot he ties is steadier than the last. Good, the old man tells him, offering a rare word of praise. Hands learn patience long before the mind does. Evening approaches softly. There is no dramatic, fiery sunset tonight, just the slow fading of blue into a soft, gentle gray. In this light, the fortress looks almost peaceful. Less like a prison, more like an old, tired structure that simply exists, a silent witness to the passing of time. Supper is quiet. People eat without hurry, savoring each bite. Afterward, no one speaks for a long time, and you realize the silence here has changed. It used to feel heavy, suffocating, full of unvoiced worries and anxieties. Now, it feels complete. It needs nothing added to it. The boy lies down on his cot, his eyes fixed on the high stone ceiling. "I don't think I'm afraid tonight," he says, his voice clear in the stillness. "Why?" you ask gently. He considers the question carefully, as if tasting the words before he speaks. "Because tomorrow," he says, "will probably be the same." The old man smiles faintly in the dim light. "Sameness," he murmurs, "is an underrated comfort." Night deepens around the fortress. There are no storms, no distant shouts, no sudden sounds to break the peace. Only the occasional shift of someone turning in their sleep, and the soft, steady movement of air through the stone corridors. You rest your head back, feeling the coolness of the wall. Your thoughts no longer race toward escape, or dwell on past mistakes, or worry about an unknown future. They drift gently, just like the dust in the sunlight earlier, moving without a specific purpose, yet not lost. And before sleep finally takes you, you notice something unexpected, something profound. You are not waiting anymore, not for release, not for answers, not even for morning to come. You are simply here breathing, resting, continuing. And for the first time since you arrived in this place, that feels like it is enough for the night. And so you sleep deeply, while the fortress keeps its quiet, steady watch around you. The night passes without dreams. You only know this because it feels shorter than sleep should feel. One moment darkness surrounds you, and the next your eyes open to a softer gray. Morning already waiting. The bell has not rung yet. Around you, others still sleep. Even the guard's footsteps are absent, as if the fortress itself has chosen to rest a little longer. You sit slowly. The air feels different again. Not warmer, not colder, just clearer, easier to breathe. The old man is awake, of course. He always is before the world remembers itself. You noticed, he says quietly. Yes. He nods toward the slit of sky high above. The color there is pale silver, clouds stretched thin enough that light spreads evenly rather than sharply. Some mornings don't hurry, he tells you. They give you time to arrive inside them. The boy wakes soon after, rubbing his eyes. He doesn't speak immediately. He simply sits and listens to nothing in particular, and smiles slightly. I slept, he says, almost surprised. You usually do, you reply. No, I mean I rested. The bell rings at last, softer in the distance than usual. The day begins. You are assigned to carry sacks from the outer store to the inner hall. Grain again, always grain, but lighter today, dried well after the rain. Step after step across the courtyard feels steady. The mud is gone, replaced by firm ground marked with old footprints hardened into memory. As you pass near the gate, it stands open longer than necessary, while a guard checks hinges and bolts. Beyond it, the road lies empty. No carts, no travelers, no voices, just a long stretch of earth leading somewhere you cannot see. You don't stare, not because you are forbidden, but because you no longer need to. Work continues. Repetition returns gently, familiar as breathing. The boy counts sacks today, whispering numbers under his breath. He reaches 23 before losing track and starting over. Each time, he laughs quietly instead of frowning. The old man stacks them with careful precision. Order calms the mind, he says, even when the world refuses to. Midday rest comes beneath open sky. A faint breeze crosses the courtyard, carrying distant scents, grass, maybe water, maybe fields warmed by sun. You close your eyes and imagine distance, not as escape, but as space that exists whether you stand within walls or beyond them. The boy lies on his back. If someone told me this was my whole life, he says, I think I could still live it. The old man considers before answering. Life is not measured by size, he says, only by presence. Afternoon passes repairing wooden handles in the workshop. You sand rough edges smooth. The motion is slow, almost meditative. Each stroke removes sharpness, leaving something easier to hold. You realize that is what time has done to you. Evening approaches with long golden light stretching across stone. The fortress glows briefly, warm, almost gentle, before shadows reclaim their places. Supper is simple and filling. After eating, no one moves for a while. Not from exhaustion, but from content stillness. The boy leans against the wall beside you. Do you think people outside ever feel trapped? He asks. Yes, even without walls. Yes, he nods, satisfied, and says nothing more. Night settles. The stars are clearer tonight, a few more visible than before. Through narrow openings they appear small, but undeniably distant. The old man watches them. They never hurry either, he murmurs. You lie down. Your thoughts drift, but not toward fear, not toward plans, only toward the quiet rhythm you now know. Wake, work, rest, breathe, before sleep. One final realization comes softly. Nothing has changed, yet everything has. The walls remain, the gates remain, the routines remain, but inside you, resistance has become acceptance, and acceptance has become peace. And so you close your eyes willingly, letting another day end exactly as it began, simply, quietly, completely. Morning arrives almost unnoticed. There is no single moment where night becomes day, only a gradual lifting of darkness, like a curtain drawn back by careful hands. You wake before the bell again, not from habit alone, but because your body expects the gentle change now. For a while, you remain lying down, breathing, listening. Someone turns in sleep. A distant hinge shifts softly in the corridor. Air passes through the high opening above, carrying the faint smell of damp earth warming outside. The old man sits beside the wall, watching nothing in particular. "The last lesson," he says quietly, as if continuing a conversation that never began. You wait. Nothing here was ever about the walls. The boy wakes slowly, stretching without the stiffness he once had. He no longer looks around in confusion when he opens his eyes. He simply joins the morning. The bell rings. You rise together. Work today is small, sweeping the inner passage, clearing dust and straw pushed in by yesterday's wind. The broom moves easily across stone. Every stroke leaves a visible path behind, a brief proof that effort changes something, even if only for a moment. Light spills farther into the corridor than you have seen before. Not brighter, just deeper, touching places that usually stay dim. You pause in it. The boy steps into the same patch and laughs quietly. "It feels warmer here." The old man nods. "Light always travels farther than we think." Later, at the well, you draw water without strain. The rope creaks in a familiar rhythm, and the bucket rises obediently. You remember your first attempt, the shaking hands, the uncertain footing, and the memory feels distant, belonging to someone else. A guard watches you for a moment, not suspiciously, not sternly, just watching. Then he leaves. Midday comes with clear sky overhead. You sit in the courtyard together for the final rest before afternoon duties. No one speaks for a long time. Finally, the boy asks, "What happens after this?" The old man smiles faintly. "After this comes another day, and after that, another." The boy considers this and seems satisfied. You realize he asked a question you no longer need answered. Afternoon brings simple repairs, tightening loose hinges along the storage doors. You hold the metal steady while the old man secures the pins. Each tap echoes briefly, then disappears into open air. When finished, the doors open and close smoothly. Nothing remarkable, yet complete. Evening arrives gently, painting the stone in soft gold before fading into blue. Supper tastes the same as always, but you notice its warmth more than its flavor. Around you, others eat calmly. No one rushes away. The fortress feels less like a place people endure and more like a place time quietly passes through. Afterward, you stand in the courtyard. The gate stands closed, as it always has. You look at it only briefly, not with longing, not with resentment, just recognition, another object, another part of the world. The old man joins you. "You understand now," he says. "Yes, freedom was never waiting outside." The boy steps beside you both. "Then where was it?" The old man gestures lightly toward your chest, where it could not be locked. Night falls fully. Stars appear above the narrow opening, steady and distant. Air cools, wrapping the day in calm silence. You return to your place and lie down. There are no questions left for tonight. No counting days, no imagining futures, no replaying past mistakes. Only the steady rhythm of breath and the quiet certainty that tomorrow will come exactly as it should. The boy sleeps quickly. The old man closes his eyes last, as always. And you rest without waiting for anything to change, because you finally understand. The dungeon did not end, but the struggle against it did. In the stillness, sleep arrives easily, like an old friend who has learned you no longer resist. Outside, beyond stone and iron and distance, the world continues its endless motion. Inside, you do the same, calmly, completely, and the night holds you without fear, until morning returns once more.